The dollhouse still sits by my window, same as it did the day they took her away. One little window with a lace curtain I sewed myself. She used to lift it gently, just to peek out at the world. But one morning, they said she shouldn't see me anymore. They said I was dangerous. A word that landed like a slap, as if love, poured slowly and carefully into a child, could ever be a threat. They didn't scream. They just closed the door and didn't open it again. And the dollhouse? It stayed there. A house within a house, waiting for the girl who never came back. I didn't shout. I just kept the curtain clean, as if one day she might pull it aside again. And no, I never stopped watching for her. If anyone has ever made you feel like your love was a risk, like being a mother was a role you had to prove, this might be your story too. Jenna used to thank me. Every Thursday morning, she'd hand Maisie over with a smile and say, "You're saving us, Lorraine. Seriously." I'd wave them off, my heart full. I thought we had built trust, but trust erodes quietly. It started with gentle check-ins that didn't feel like check-ins. "Maisie said you let her bake with you. That's adorable. Just, she didn't burn herself, right?" Or, "She came home pretty tired last time. Did she nap okay?" I answered honestly, not realizing each word was being folded into something else. Jenna would nod, her smile warm, but her eyes already miles ahead. Then one afternoon, she asked if Maisie had cried while brushing her hair. I said yes. There was a knot. I was gentle, but she teared up a little. Jenna just said, "Thanks for being honest," and she wrote something in that little planner of hers. I thought she was tracking therapy sessions or nap times. I didn't realize she was keeping score. A week later, my son called. "Mom, Jenna mentioned Maisie was a bit rattled after last visit. Did anything happen?" Rattled? We made paper flowers, danced to old jazz, and she fell asleep in my lap. Still, I said no. But I didn't ask why he was calling instead of visiting. I didn't want to sound defensive. That was my mistake. When you're being rewritten, silence doesn't protect you. It signs the page for them. Jenna came by the following week, clipboard in hand. Said she wanted to align routines between our homes. I welcomed her in. She walked the house slowly, peeked into the trash under the sink, glanced at the stove, took notes on her phone. Then, at the door, she turned and said, "Lorraine, I know you love Maisie. That's not the question." I froze. She continued, "But love doesn't always look safe to children, and we need to make sure Maisie feels emotionally secure, everywhere." She wasn't accusing, she was redefining. After that, they disappeared. No Thursday drop-off, no calls, no apologies. Just air. I texted, heard nothing. Then, a week later, a white envelope arrived. No return address. Just my name. Inside, a single sheet. Clinical. Final. Contact between minor Maisie R. and Ms. Lorraine Marks is to be suspended until further review. I sat down with it in my lap for over an hour. Not crying, just reading the sentence over, again and again. Not until we talk. Not until we clarify. Until further review. Like I was a file in a cabinet, a questionable recipe, a maybe problem. That was the betrayal. Not the silence. Not even Jenna. But the boy I raised, my son, letting it happen. The same boy who used to run to my bed at midnight, whispering, "Don't let anything happen to me." And here I was, vanished. No voice. No hearing, no goodbye. They didn't bury me. They erased me. The hardest part wasn't being left out. It was watching the world behave as if I had never been there. My phone stopped lighting up on Thursdays. The bowl of Maisie's hair ties sat untouched. I stopped checking the mailbox in the mornings. No drawings, no scribbled notes in pink marker. The silence wasn't loud. It was efficient. And slowly, my hands began forgetting what they used to do. I still poured tea for two. I still laid out 2 spoons. I told myself it was habit. But the truth is, I needed one more chair to acknowledge I still existed. Some mornings, I'd find myself standing by the hallway closet, staring at her rain boots. Fox faces on each toe. She used to line them up nose to nose so they could chat. I never moved them, not because I expected her back, but because I couldn't bear to erase her, the way they erased me. I stopped sewing, not from protest, just because my fingers wouldn't move. Once, I caught myself folding laundry, and a memory struck so sharply I sat on the floor. Maisie, crawling into my lap, Lily tucked under one arm. She whispered, "You're my softest person." And then she fell asleep, forehead against my ribs. Safe, trusting, certain. What did Jenna say to undo that? Did she even have to say anything? Or did time do it for her? Was I so easily replaced by the rhythm of a new routine? That question gnawed at me more than any accusation. There was a kind of grief that came without a funeral. A kind that kept moving the furniture in your mind so you couldn't settle. I didn't cry every day, but I forgot things. Left the stove on once, called the pharmacy twice by accident. The house didn't echo. It winced. My neighbors stopped waving, not out of cruelty, just discomfort. The kind of discomfort people feel when they see a woman swallowed by something they don't want to name. They lowered their eyes the way people do around grief they don't want to inherit. My son didn't call. He didn't ask what happened. And I began to wonder if maybe there was something I had missed. Some truth I hadn't seen. Because when a lie is told long enough and no one speaks up, it starts to look like memory. One night, I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual, staring, trying to remember the version of me Maisie knew. Not the woman people now called unstable, just Grandma. With thread on her sleeves and strawberry jam on her cheek. I thought of calling them, screaming, begging, telling them everything. But I didn't. Not because I was weak, because I knew that kind of fury would only confirm the portrait they'd painted. And worse, it might make Maisie doubt her own memories. I wasn't ready to erase that for her. So I stayed still. Not silent out of surrender, but silent out of fierce, aching love. The cloth bag I used to carry Maisie's snacks still sat on the top shelf of the hallway closet, folded flat, untouched. I hadn't opened it since that afternoon. The one where Jenna pulled me aside after our usual Thursday playtime and said, in that voice she uses when she wants to sound calm but firm, "We need to talk." She didn't yell. She didn't accuse me of anything directly, just questioned, asked how often I'd been raising my voice around Maisie, whether I felt emotionally centered these days, and whether I thought, deep down, I was still fit to supervise a 5-year-old. I remember blinking. "What are you talking about?" She said Maisie had gone quiet after one of our visits, that she mentioned I snapped when her toy broke, that I'd scared her. My stomach dropped. I remembered the moment. Maisie had been playing near my sewing kit and pulled out the fabric shears. I reacted on instinct, I shouted her name. Loud. Too loud, maybe. But my voice was panic, not anger. She dropped them. I knelt down. She wasn't crying. I explained why scissors were sharp and dangerous, and that Grandma just got scared. We hugged. We moved on. I thought we had moved on, but Jenna said there was audio, a clip from the nanny cam. Just my voice. No video, no context. I'm not saying you meant harm, Jenna said, her arms crossed. But it's clear you're not always steady. That was the word that gutted me. Steady. She said Maisie needed consistency, that maybe, for now, it was better if we paused visits. Just until we're sure everything's all right. She smiled when she said it. I didn't argue, not because I agreed, but because I knew arguing would prove her point. She'd already built the story. Anything I said would only color inside the lines she'd drawn. I walked home in silence, and for weeks, I stayed there. I didn't call my son. I wanted to. I wanted to ask what he'd heard, what he believed, but something in me hesitated. Maybe I was afraid the silence would speak louder than his words. Maybe I already knew. Days passed, then weeks. The house got quieter than usual. My hands stopped sewing. My meals shrank into toast and tea, but the bag stayed on that shelf. I saw it every morning, and every time, I told myself, not today. I couldn't face it. I couldn't face what might not be inside. Then one Tuesday, I did. I don't know why. Maybe grief softens into curiosity. Or maybe a part of me still needed to know whether Maisie remembered. I pulled the bag down. My fingers shook as I unzipped it. Inside were the usual things. A pink hair clip, 2 raisins clinging to a napkin, a crayon with the paper peeled halfway off, and then, tucked at the bottom, beneath a folded sock, was Lily. The cloth doll I had sewn for Maisie when she turned 3. Her body made from an old nightgown, big button eyes, a stitched-on smile that was always just a little crooked. Jenna never liked Lily. Said she looked too homemade. Claimed Maisie had misplaced her months ago. But Lily was here. Clean. Folded. Carefully placed. Maisie had done this. Maybe that last afternoon. Maybe during our final hug. Maybe Jenna didn't even know. Tears came fast, surprising me. Because in that moment, I saw what I hadn't dared to hope for. Maisie hadn't forgotten me. She hadn't believed the version of me they'd tried to sell her. She couldn't undo the distance, but she left me this. A voice. Her voice. Quiet. Certain. Unmistakable. I placed Lily on the windowsill, facing outward, like a tiny sentinel. 2 days later, someone knocked on my door. Not Jenna, not my son. A woman in a navy jacket with a clipboard.
Lorraine Marks? I nodded, hesitant. I'm with Family Services. We're reopening a review of your case. There have been inconsistencies in the prior reports. I blinked. I didn't file anything. She gave a tight smile. We know, but a few things have come to light. Testimonies, footage, and a drawing. From Maisie, it doesn't match the behavioral concerns cited. A drawing. My heart stalled. She didn't elaborate, just asked to schedule a conversation, asked if I was willing. I said yes, of course, because I had nothing to hide. After she left, I stood by the window. Outside, a dark car pulled away, and in the back seat, a small face peeked out. Maisie. Her eyes met mine for just a second. No smile, no wave. Just the kind of gaze children give when they're not sure if they're allowed to hope yet. I didn't wave either. I didn't want to make it harder. But in that glance, I saw the whole truth. They tried to make her forget me, but she remembered. And she was trying, in the only way she could, to remind the world I was still here, still steady, still hers. I didn't go back to that house, not to plead, not to explain. They'd already decided who I was. A risk. A whisper behind a locked door. But silence is not surrender. One Thursday afternoon, I walked past the local library. A poster caught my eye. It was simple. Story Hour needs you. I stared at it for a long while. My hands were trembling, not from age, but from something deeper. A question. If they wouldn't let me love in their house, could I still love, just not with permission? I stepped in, signed my name. No one asked about Maisie. No one needed to. Every week, I showed up. Hair tied neat, dress pressed. I read about dragons and kindness, about stars and wishes and patient old turtles. The kids laughed. They listened. One boy gave me a drawing of a cat in glasses. Another tried to pronounce my name and failed adorably. But it was the 5th week when I saw it. On the far wall, where the children's drawings hung like prayer flags, there was a new picture. Crayon on white paper. A face. Not quite mine, but not unlike either. Round cheeks, soft eyes, and just under the chin, a purple bow. It wasn't signed, but it didn't have to be. My heart remembered before my eyes did. I didn't cry. Not then. Instead, I took out the old ribbon I once gave Maisie. The one she clutched when she was scared of thunder. I had kept it, pressed in a drawer I never opened. I left it by the drawing. No note, no claim. Just a whisper of who I still was. Not erased, just elsewhere. The librarian must have seen me lingering. She smiled and said, "You're becoming the kids' favorite, you know?" I didn't know how to answer that, but I nodded. And when I turned to go, the sunlight hit just right. The ribbon stirred, barely. A breeze, a breath, something passing through. I wasn't waiting anymore, just ready. The next morning, I found it under the old mixing bowl. Folded, purple crayon, a butterfly with big eyes and a crooked smile. No words, just a drawing. But I knew. She'd drawn it before. Years ago, when we sat at the kitchen table and made up stories about brave bugs who never gave up. I had taught her how to shape wings, how to curl antennae, how to color from the inside out. Maisie remembered. She didn't need to speak. That drawing said more than any adult had dared. I sat with it on my lap, sunlight pooling on the floor like warm milk. I didn't cry. I didn't ache. I just exhaled. Not everything was broken. Outside, in the garden, the lavender had gone leggy. I trimmed it back and in its place, planted milkweed seeds I'd saved from a trip upstate. They'd been meant for her once, back when I thought I could make her world a little wilder, a little more welcoming to butterflies. I never mailed them, but I planted them now. It was slow work, earth under my nails, knees aching, the soft pull of a worm. But every scoop of soil felt like a small surrender, not to pain, but to something quieter, something possible. Back inside, I opened the drawer where I used to keep birthday cards, pulled out a spiral notebook. and began to write. Once, there was a girl who wasn't afraid of thorns. She didn't think the cactus was mean, just misunderstood. And one day, when everyone else walked by, she knelt beside it and said, "I know you bloom at night. I'll wait." I paused, let the ink dry, then smiled. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for apologies, not for explanations. I had something better now. A new story. If Maisie ever wanted to read it, it would be here. And if not, maybe some other girl would. The drawing still sits on my windowsill, facing the garden. And soon, when the milkweed grows tall enough, maybe a monarch or two will stop by. They always find their way, even the lost ones. The lace curtain is a little frayed now, but it still catches the light just right. Some days, I think about how easy it was for them to erase me, and how quietly Maya placed me back into her world. Not with an apology, but with a memory. Love doesn't always return the way we expect. Sometimes, it arrives in the shape of a question. Soft, unspoken, but enough. If you've ever felt unseen in your own family, you're not alone, sweetheart. If you want to tell me your story, I'm listening. The email is down there somewhere, just waiting. And if you're not ready to speak, maybe just whisper it to the light. It remembers things better than people do.